right from identifying the idea, working on the data, working on the models, portfolio construction, backtesting, simulation. On each of these steps, there are analysts involved who are working with the PMs in refining it.
So the work that you did at Phoenix, quantitative finance, short form of it, quant finance it could sound it sounds very interesting. It sounds very kind of obscure, but I think ultimately it sounds very intimidating for a lot of people. How would you explain your day-to-day work when you were in that role as a quantitative analyst so that any people that are either students or earlier analysts can understand what that role is and relate to it?
I'll explain it in the context of Versor because a lot of the things we do today a lot of the analysts sort of are involved in that process. So I will sort of explain what the quant finance process is, and uh, there are various steps in there where the analysts are focused on. So I think one of the first thing we do is see, is there a repeatable mispricing in the market that we can take an advantage of it? We evaluate the size of that opportunity and if we have an edge in taking advantage of that opportunity. So that's the first thing. Once we do that, we look at, we try and identify data sets that can help us evaluate and take advantage of that mispricing. We also are focused on building proprietary data sets that can give us an edge. So, for example, at Versor in event-driven strategy, we've built a proprietary database that's unique and that sort of forms a base for a lot of our research. Once we have the data, we build models to take advantage of the opportunity. So that's an edge for us. We test these models over time and across asset classes or regions as applicable. We apply portfolio construction, risk management techniques to integrate the signals or events in our portfolio. Then we do a thorough simulation, stress testing over time. And then if we are convinced that the idea makes sense, we introduce it in our investment process. We typically start trading with a very, very small allocation from our proprietary capital. And then after we get comfortable, we introduce it into client portfolios. And then finally, there is a continuous monitoring and improvement of the strategy as needed. So these are the series of steps we follow. Now, individual person can do this. It's always a team effort. Right from identifying the idea, working on the data, working on the models, portfolio construction, backtesting, simulation. On each of these steps, there are analysts involved who are working with the PMs in refining it. So a lot of my early days at Phoenix and a lot of the things that analysts do today at Versor are working across these steps.
And do you have an industry that you specialize in?
For
Just out of
myself,
curiosity, yeah.
for last over a decade now, I have been specializing in global event-driven strategies, including merger arbitrage and other events.
Okay. I know that a couple of people in the past that I've worked with eventually have their own niche, and whether it's by virtue of where they start in M&A, more product, or whether they kind of start in media and telco and they kind of stay in that class for a very long time. Just out of curiosity, when you pick up, like a general mispricing, how do you go about that? Like, it seems so broad. Like, do you see, or like, are you already kind of doing analysis in various portfolios and you kind of see something on a public security or a public company? Or like, how are you sourcing these ideas?
There are three sort of primary sources for ideas. One is what we observe in the market. So I've been trading event-driven strategies for over a decade now. I've been researching event-driven for almost 2 decades now. We see things that are happening in the markets, and we identify, okay, are there reputable events? So one is what we observe around various events, around capital structure arbitrage or merger arbitrage, various things in the market. The second source of ideas, and in a firm like Versor, so Versor specializes across the equity spectrum. So we do corporate events, which is my specialty, but we also have other teams that are focused on statistical arbitrage and also equity futures based trading. So the second source of ideas is often interesting things that the other teams observe or other research ideas that others are taking up internally. And there is a lot of cross pollination of ideas where others find something interesting and they suggest for us to look into it, or we find something that they're doing interesting and say, okay, can we apply this in what we do? So that's the second source. And then the third source is we do spend a lot of time reading research papers. Now no research paper sort of gives a strategy that we can just pick up and use, but we take ideas from different papers and then apply it in the context of what we are doing and see if that makes sense. So there are sort of these three primary sources for ideas.
Yeah. And the second one really speaks to how it is a team effort. And that coming together of synergies is what puts it together.
Yes, yes. Systematic investing involves a lot of collaboration across teams, right? And it is entire the teams that come together and sort of make it a success.
And when you think about your career growth, I think it's so important, like to be able to be part of a team, to work well with a team. It typically it typically creates great people that can succeed individually when you could succeed with a team. When you think about your career growth, what do you think helped you stand out and move forward in such a technical and such a competitive field with ease?
So I think there are three different reasons for me that has helped me with my career growth. First is continuous learning. So coming from an engineering background, I needed formal finance training, so I pursued my master's in finance. Post which I also pursued the CFA designation. Um, Recently, I completed a year-long course in advanced data science and AI. Constantly learning, reading research papers is a very core part of that has helped me grow in my career. Embracing technologies early. Versor, when we started, was one of the first hedge funds in the world to be 100% on the cloud more than 11 years ago. So at that point in time, there were hardly any such funds. Today, it's very standard and we are way beyond that. But we were early on the cloud. Similarly, we started using AI in 2018. We started using NLPs and other AI techniques in 2018, even before ChatGPT became vogue. So just being early, embracing early technologies has always helped. And at the end of the day, it's also a lot of hard work. I think, in the financial markets, we are competing against some of the best minds in the world every day. And it just requires us to be at our best.
A common question that I come across is, like once ChatGPT came out and the language models, the other ones out there have come out, it makes it really difficult for people to stand out on a resume, on a cover letter. And the specific example is my husband works for an engineering firm, and the recruitment team said, like over the past year, when we receive, let's say, like 100, 200 resumes for a software engineering position, 4 years ago, we would sift through those resumes and we would very clearly know 10 people that we want to interview because they present very well, they stand out, they all have written those documents in their own words. But today, everyone looks the same. Everyone seems outstanding in their own way, and you want to interview everyone. When it comes to people that are either looking to pivot into finance or just kind of climb up the ladder in seniority wise, is there a piece of advice that you would give them to people to stand out in a time where it becomes increasingly difficult to do so?
I think it's so, yes, a lot of the resumes. So, let me actually spend a couple of minutes on the interview process and then answer the question, right? So, it is challenging because all resumes do look good. So, a couple of things that we do is we do have a rigorous interview process, and so we focus a lot on the actual experience and try to understand if it has the skills that we need. So, for example, for researchers, we do look at experience working with data. And so as part of the previous experience, we do focus a lot on that how much data have they really worked with. So that's for example. But then we also have a live case study where we ask you to uh, solve a case study with somebody from our team actually observing you, and you're okay. We ask the candidate to use whatever tools they want to solve it, and we try and understand their thought process uh, uh, in that live case study. So that's sort of allows us to um, understand how do people go through that research project when they have given when they are given the problem that they may not be familiar with. And in our interactions, we always try to understand the why of it. So we understand what something has done, but we try and go into why of it. And I think that is where we are also able to get if somebody is just using Chat GPT to say the right things versus they understand why they had taken certain decisions. So, if we are talking about a project, we always try to get to why somebody used a particular technology or why they used a particular model or an algorithm to solve the problem. And I think sort of those going down to the why, the first principles is allows us to identify candidates who stand out. Now, what can candidates do to get there, right? So I think first thing I would suggest is understand the skills that are needed for a role and work towards acquiring them. Acquire them to a significant degree before reaching out to firms for opportunities. So, for example, if somebody's just looked at things at a higher level and then reach out, then they may not go through all of it. That's one. Second, I would suggest is find a relevant internship or a role that you want to get into, even if it means a little less money. But I think that is very critical, especially for someone who is looking to pivot into finance today. That experience will be more helpful and more than make up for whatever sacrifice that you may have to make in the short term. If that is difficult, I would suggest do a portfolio of work, multiple projects that indicate significant effort on your part to solve complicated, relevant problems. Uh, I think so. I think following these steps will allow people to stand out. And in general, if somebody wants to pivot, my suggestion is just make the change today. The more you wait, harder it will be.